am on mute. This is what happens when you have a really long day. And yeah, so welcome to all of you here. I uh, I hope you all had a very productive day and are sitting with a cup of coffee and going to enjoy this next session on celebrating books and authors and supporters of books and publishers and everybody around the book. So today uh, we are going to launch this book. It's called One Love and the Many Lives of OSIP. Now, yes, thank you very much. But before we go to the book, I will not say anything more about the book, but I'm going to introduce to you today's author and speaker. Both of them are celebrated figures, and hence I'll keep the introductions very brief. To begin with, I'll start with C.P. Surendran, sir. He is a poet, novelist, screenplay writer, and columnist. His latest volume of verse is Available Lights, preceded by portraits of the space we occupy, canaries of the moon on the moon, posthumous poems in Gemini 2, One Love, and the Many Lives of OSIP. The earlier ones are Hadal. Did I pronounce that right?
Hadel.
Lost and Found, and An Iron Harvest. His columns have appeared in leading newspapers in India and abroad, and he lives in Delhi but is currently in Kerala. Next, we have, and very graciously, thank you for accepting our request to do this session with us on Kalinga Literary Festival platform. Vani Tripathi Tikoo is an actor, teacher, columnist, activist, supporter of literature, and many more. She effortlessly and gracefully combines all these roles in one, that is her. Apart from that, I'll mention a couple of more points, and that is something I find it very inspiring. She pioneered the use of theater as a mode of learning in schools and practicing performing arts as tools of curriculum learning. She was instrumental in the establishment of Madhya Pradesh Natya Vidyalaya, the country's first state run drama school. She also endeavored to voice issues around gender equality and women empowerment using theater. The list will go on. The list of things that she has done will go on. But I know all of you are aware of her work. And if not, you will Google her up and after this conversation. Welcome to you all, and welcome to you, CP sir, and welcome to you, Vani Ma'am. So I will hand over the mic to you to take the session forward.
Thank you, Trisha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trisha. And this will be incomplete if we don't thank you, one of the young czarinas of the publishing industry, and courageous, absolutely brave in your choice of work. And also, this is a very brave work to publish. So, congratulations to all of you all. Of course, to C P Surendran and to you, Trisha D. Niyogi and Niyogi Books.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very proud to do so.
I welcome everybody to this session, which is a part of Bhav Samvad. भाव संवाद कलिंगा लिटरेरी फेस्टिवल का एक बहुत अहम अंग है और दिस इज अ एब्सोल्यूट डिलाइट दैट आई एम सिटिंग हियर with a brand new book. I think it still has to hit the bookshelves all across the country, written by C P Surendran. He's a poet, he's an author, he's a columnist, he's a screenplay writer, and this amazing cinematic journey of this crazy, complex, layered book called One Love and the Many Lives of OSIP. So, C P Surendran, you're sitting in Kerala right now, and we are all slurping on this delicious, complex book that you've written. And OSIP B is equated to Osip Mandelstam, a poet who was a part of the persecution of the Stalinist regime in Russia and who died in exile. Tell us about both the OSIPs in your life and who's the one who actually impacted the other.
Great question. Thank you both, Trisha and Vani, to have come on this stage. Okay, this book, I must give some background. It took about 7 years of writing, and I think it kind of fell together only in the last 6 months of the 7 years. I must have done close to how many versions? I have no idea. And the characters have grown. In the first few versions, it was about over 100,000 words, which had to be cut down. And as in a music composition, what happens is that you change one note, the entire symphony changes. So you have to keep redoing it. But I think some of where it might have kind of done me some good, and I'm hoping that it is going to do some good to the readers as well, which is a rather big hope. It is that how the experiences that happen to you sort of get forged into fictive level. Now, you were talking about Osip Mandelstam. Now, the reason why I chose that name is that I have been reading Osip Mandelstam for some time. In fact, my interest in him doubled when I was reading the biography which Nadia Mandelstam wrote, who was his wife, who wrote on him after about 30 or 40 years after his death. Now, the death happens in 1938. He was twice exiled to Siberia. And the second time he died of starvation, in 1938. Now, this particular year has a certain kind of crucial significance to OSIP B, that's OSIP Balakrishnan, who is our 18-year-old protagonist, a boarding school student, a bit dysfunctional, and he's adrift in this deranged world. And to my understanding of things, Mandelstam himself was a very dysfunctional poet in very many ways. He used to compose beautiful poems along with Anna Akhmatova, but he was a dysfunctional poet, and although in the beginning Stalin used to like him, and later he said, preserve him, but send him away, something like that. And the reason why I have chosen Osip Mandelstam as one of the narrative voices or the kind of submerged conscience of the novel is that he's both a victim as well as a victor in very many ways. But it strikes me that the voices we hear in our head is also replicative of those tendencies in each human being. We kind of we try to be very, very what you call sympathetic to the underdog, but in our own daily contact, it is impossible because we have to assert ourselves in some place somewhere, right? So OSIP B actually takes on this voice, and the voice is taken on for two reasons. One, of course, is that he is the adoptive grandson of a very Stalinist leader. And it later strikes us that he has actually killed some 23 people, and he suppresses his wife, Gloria, without actually knowing that he is suppressing her. It is only after his death that Gloria actually asserts herself and becomes a kind of a leader in her own right. So the voice of Osip in this book is both that of a persecuted poet, at the same time somebody who's receptive to persecution because the grandfather dominates him. So that, in a nutshell, is the reason why I, took his name. For the second aspect of this is actually that the 1930s to 1960s Russia has very many things close to the Indian political and personal situations. There are several families which disintegrated because Stalin would say, I am the real thing. I'm not just a state. I'm everything for you. So you must betray your father or your mother or your wife or your husband or your sister or your brother, because this is for the upkeep of the state. And what is the state for? The state is there for the future of you, your youngsters, your children, and so on and so forth. But to reach there, many millions have to be killed. So suffer for now. And he actually grew, he fostered about him a whole surveillance society. To my mind, we are living in a surveillance society far greater than what Stalin conceived, because there you actually have state looking into you, snooping in on you. For us here, not only does, as of the last week's Pegasus incident, not only does the state snoop on you, we snoop on each other as well. So this is a surveillance society in very many ways, the CCTV culture, the social media culture. So the individual's right against the group's right has never been more threatened than now. This particular aspect of the Indian situation is represented by OSIP. Thanks.
CP, there are many cited conversations in the book. You've skillfully, there are so many binaries, there are so many multi-layered conversations, which makes it complex and yet very interesting. One is OSIP's complete obsession with Elizabeth, who is his teacher, very much reminding me of the famous Raj Kapoor film Mera Naam Joker, where a very young Rishi Kapoor gets completely enamored by Simi Garewal, and which is a big narrative of the film. Then you have various ranges of places. You have Delhi, you have post-revolutionary Russia, you have Oxford. You have so many different multi-layered conversations which are converging into one, and yet each one of them at various standpoints have parallels which do not meet each other. This is a very rare kind of idiom that you see in contemporary writing. Tell us some more about this craft, because this probably will become one of the, as I say, the non-linear narratives of storytelling, which are very fast emerging into the world around us, including the dystopian times of COVID.
So, see, my father, his name is Pavanan. He was one of the founder writers in terms of criticism and journalism in Kerala. And he was also partly a chief administrator of Kerala Sahitya Academy. And toward the end of his life, I think the last 10 or 15 years, almost years of his life, he was, he had dementia, Alzheimer's. I have written poems on him, some 30 poems on him, called Catapharc, which has been already published. But one of the things I found about him was that, he would not think about Stalin, which is actually a Communist Party problem. Now, we can dismiss this as a very political problem, which we should not be, it's a large abstract problem, right? But actually not. You see, the thing is, whether it's Stanley Swami or, somebody dying in the Delhi border, or a man or woman going mad in one of the small houses in Kerala or Delhi or anywhere, or Bombay. These are, these are the impacts, or these are the effects of large abstract ideas. We don't understand the link of it because, for example, there's this, the way we react to issues, the way it has been technologically enabled to voice any kind of opinions that we have without even thinking, that gives us a very delusory idea of that, we have arrived. To my mind, that aspect of delusion that we live day after day, I have mentioned a phrase in the novel saying that, we hallucinate normality, right? The gestures we go through, from a kitchen to bedroom or whatever, is an hallucination. We do things without even thinking about it, or watching television. These are gestures of daily hallucinatory normality. Now, and my father's coming into his past, going out, refusing to think about communist ideology, the problems of that ideology, but still being a very good man. He did a lot of things towards the end of his life. Though he was losing memory, he actually organized rights campaigns for sex workers. They used to come into my Thrissur home. So he was a good man, but he was misguided because he was not thinking through things. He couldn't take that. So that lobotomy of one part of your brain actually happens to this man also. So what I'm trying to do here is, through his loss of memory, the grandfather's loss of memory, which Gloria, his wife, thinks is an act. It is a pretension because he can't face up to the reality. Now, it is in that gray area of the daily life, affected in such a manner that he has lost the idea of what is true, what is real, what is not real. It is in that area that I am trying to play this plot. So although there is a very clear action line, which you're talking about the structure and the craft of it, I hope when I say talk about craft, I don't sound vain. It's easy to sound vain because you've been living with this for some 7 years, right? So it is, that movement, the OSIP Balakrishnan, just past 18, ditched apparently by his girlfriend, who is a teacher, and and his journey towards her, he's going, and she's vanished. Now that happens in the first 2 pages. So in his journey to finding her, whether it's in Delhi, whether it's in Moscow or in Oxford or in some dream or in the some boarding school quarters, it is in that journey that he discovers himself. So to come with a very normal MA literature class, it is a picaresque kind of novel. It's a journey of one boy towards his identity and his maturity at one level. But what I'm trying to do in that journey is to bring in about 5 or 6 characters. Gloria, the ideologist Menon, who has got it all wrong apparently, a news baron who's modeled on someone I suppose I know, and his roommate, a kind of a very enterprising young man who is going to be a fake guru, but he's not a bad man. None of these people are really bad people. Elizabeth herself, although she may come across as somebody who is into her freedom and doesn't particularly care what she does to get that freedom, is I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I mean, that's what it is about, right? It is your life. You got to do something with it. So the idea of this boy finding himself is actually kind of tagged into, kind of played into a lot of other people as well. So which is the reason why one is saying in the novel that someone else's name is our fate. That is how it happens. So when you mentioned the structure of it, and at least there's one critic who has completely misread the novel already, although it is not perhaps physically out. He actually said that there's a possibility that it can be read as completely as a hallucination of this boy sitting on a swing. That's not the case. He actually goes through the pain of it, really. So the misreading of the characters with each other in relation to each other, it is in that misreading that I'm trying to play this entire book. So the structure is non-linear. You're absolutely right. It's non-linear, and I kept it that way for the simple reason that I don't like the simplicity which a narrative of that sort offers, because the characters in this book are quite complex themselves.
the delusion of OSIP, which constantly, you said recently that we are all nuts, we live with our dead. You said
I
that,
did,
right?
yeah.
At
I
this
did.
point, I want to read this one excerpt from the book, which has struck me as there is also great cinema in the book, CP.
Thank
I'm
you.
after all an actor.
I'm with you.
And
I'm
the
with you there.
cinematic frame by frame advance of the craziness and the delusion and his present life and the trauma of losing the beloved, which he thinks is the beloved, whereas Elizabeth doesn't, and so on. This is
Let
a
us do that
chapter
movie.
called,
Let us do that,
sorry,
Vani.
say,
Thank you. All right.
that absolutely. Eli Kali Mata, and I've chosen these two portions of the book because they are not just cinematic to read. There's a visual, sensory, sort of aspect to the way you've written these passages. But there is also the association, as you said, somebody misread him, that he was probably hallucinating all of this sitting on a swing. No, he's a feeling, breathing, a spitting fire and feeling very hurt kind of a person. And I think that is what makes him so unique. He's so young, yet he's like so many different vistas of consciousness layered into one. And that is what makes him so complex and so interesting. The white colonnade of Connaught Circus is now empty. The fog is thick. But does it justify what seems to be a vast exercise in evacuation as perhaps befitting a war? Or a lockdown in the face of a contagion? Right in front of me across the road is a high-rise circular building, the Statesman House, huge, spectral, waning and waxing in the fog. Unreal. I look around. I'm back at the corner of the M block. I walk around the circus. I am exhausted. I want to sit down, surrender to the night, but if I do that, I may not be able to get up. Hours later, so it seems, near Janpat, I see a shop is open. A cubby hole of an office. A sign says Kashmiri Travels. Next to it, from a hook, hangs a lantern draped in black crepe. Huh? Kashmir in morning? I hesitate. Then I step in. A small dark man sleeps on a longish glass-topped table right over the dull lake. His head rests on a mountain peak. On a chair next to the table sits a jar of water. I would like to have a drink from it. I stare at him. He's snoring. When he snores, his lips flutter. What's his breath like? I will wait for 5 minutes. If he wakes up, I will ask him for a ticket to Srinagar. I will join the separatist movement, Free Kashmir, Free OSIP. This is my moment of free truth. Kashmir to Shaheed OSIP Balakrishnan. I shall redeem honor by throwing myself in the way of bullets fired by the Indian army. Someone will take a photograph of the leap, firing by last volley at the army, at the jeep, and win a Pulitzer. Your karma is another's destiny. What a loaded passage, CP. Somebody taking a picture, firing a volley at the army, gets a Pulitzer Prize. Look at the complexity of OSIP's mind.
That's true.
You have to tell us more about this.
Oh, so thank you. So this is, one of the things in this novel is that, I have brought in 3 or 4 strands together. So when you say that, somebody to prove his love or heroism to a woman across the continent somewhere else, and then he goes in there and fires his volley of the last fire before he is shot down is someone else's glory, right? So that is how we are connected, which is the reason why I keep saying that, politics is not really out there. It is kind of happening in our at our home, in our daily gestures. So here, the interconnectedness as well as the randomness of people's fates, we are all at the mercy of others' destinies, really speaking. So this is what is meant at one level. But the other level, is that if at all people are able to read it in that sense, is that, see, Kashmir is the sense of the birth of a nation or a subnational identity, right? Which is a problematic spot, right? But later in the book, or maybe almost parallel to the book, there is a chapter devoted to Anand, with a fake guru who's his friend, who's OSIP's friend, who makes good in Dharamshala, where he interacts with Tibetan activists. So if you can say one subnational identity is dying, there's another subnational identity or a national identity taking birth. So we have a lot of these kind of what you call conflicts in the novel. The other thing which he is trying to say, the boy is trying to say to his immature mind at one layer of this narrative, is that this is his Spanish Republic moment, right? This is the moment where you are a great rebel, you are a great liberal, you are a great progressive revolutionary. What do you want to do? I want to go and fight for something, right? Either you fight in social media sitting on a toilet, or you go out there and fight. But we can't do that. That is the whole thing. We have become a kind of painstakingly painless, toilet revolutionaries. So what is actually happening in this point is that he's aware of this contradiction. See, he's not going to go through that Kashmir heroism. He's not going to do that. He's not into it. He's going to do something else altogether, which furthers his interest with this in this woman, right? So this is the reason why he's going to hold to ransom the body of the school priest and take money and go to London or Oxford. So we have here a kind of situation where it is hinted at, which we live now in our daily lives, but we are unable to do it. So we can't break through our screens into the real streets. That's very difficult, which is the reason why we have a certain kind of politics. Now, the reason why I keep talking about politics is not because this novel is really political novel, not in that sense. But what I'm trying to say is that when somebody asks me if this is a political novel, what I'm trying to say is that it is political to the extent that all these things are subject or material of our experience. That is all there is to it, really speaking. So the Spanish Republic moment is where he actually fails, which I think is also what's happening to a larger, you are a great theater activist, you know the difference between talking about something and actually doing. I am a talker. I am not a doer. You are a doer. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And I think, I am trying, in that passage at least, trying to point out the increasing distance between, what we are talking and what we are living.
But he says, at one point, I suffer from an inability to see things for what they are. There is a very interesting dissection between, just as you describe OSIP's heroism, which turns into, as Gloria says, a manufactured reality of the grandfather, and she continues to say he's pretending to have Alzheimer's. Is this what happens to ideologies? Young minds with their heroism, whether on a toilet seat or on a bus stand, tweeting the 30-second number.
Right.
And then, as you grow older, the trajectory of that ideology, the dissemination of the ideological dream, the ideological utopia, turns you into something which looks like a delusion then. Is this what you're trying to say, between the comparison of the grandfather and OSIP, constantly juxtapositioned against each other.
That is true. That's true, because you see, the two things, as far as I can see here, I must, despite sounding vain, but compliment you for your astute reading. See, I remember when I was spending, some of my childhood years were in Trivandrum, in Kerala, and right across our house was the Soviet Information Center at that time. And the pillar of it's a huge building, and as they were constructing it, the pillar crashed and 6 people got killed. And at that time, the only place where they had a telephone was in my house, so they had to come and call up people and say that the Soviet house has crashed. And I remember my father was really shocked. He couldn't know, he wouldn't know how to place a Soviet building collapsing, and then so when we are talking about ideology, what are we really talking about? We are talking about the sacrificing of the individual, in numbers, of course, maybe later on, to an idea. And I know that what I'm saying doesn't come through as a very progressive thing, but I'm on the watch out for that, because if the individual is not in a position to offend the group, if the individual is not in a position to offend the state, then there is no rights there at all. Now, we can argue about this. We can talk about how the entire history is actually a movement towards group rights, identity rights, and I agree with you. But since we are talking, we talked some time ago about OSIP Mandelstam. In OSIP Mandelstam's 4th prose, which is an Egyptian stamp, and it's a prose works, which was nobody was publishing it for a long time. Then he finally found a small publisher. In there is a teenager boy who is almost lynched, and he is not a communist, he is not a capitalist, he is not a right winger or left winger. He's just a boy who is maybe with a sensitive kind of sensibility, and he just kind of escapes it. And this happens in very many ways to Osip Mandelstam himself. He actually slapped the grandnephew, I think, of Tolstoy, and then he walks out because he was doing something which was very pro-Stalinist and anti creativity, and and he was the secretary or commissioner of the writers group or something. And it is after that Mandelstam actually had a problem, So the short point of this is actually that we cannot really sacrifice, individuals to ideologies and groupthink. I think there must be that always. There must be protection of the what you call the victimized groups. But as a writer, or perhaps even as a columnist, my point is my whole thing in my long life is to, wherever the group is there, does an individual suffer? I think there is where I am with him. It doesn't even matter to me much whether he is right or wrong, but to articulate his position, that is very important. I mean, that is what it is, that individual's position or ground, but in extent that it becomes group's ground. So these are the reasons why I have taken OSIP as a narrative voice, and the counterpoise by the grandfather, who is not a bad man at all. But the fact also is that what we think as good all the time, is actually kind of sort of sliding over a thin ice of badness. Anytime there could be a crack, anytime there could be a hole, and down you go.
Through many conversations of characters and their entwinement, which is actually the cause of the book, you also get to hear one of the characters saying to the other, maybe world does not want to read you. We will make sure of that. Is that a threat, a promise, or a challenge?
So that actually happens to Arjun Bedi, who is the mentor and the iconoclast writer of in the book, who kind of helps out, OSIP Mandelstam with his passport and his gas connection, and generally he kind of helps him out. But he is so some of the experiences that I have gone through have been transfigured, hopefully, in that. And I'm not, passing him. I'm not giving him a pass mark or anything. I make his life really miserable, right, in whatever that he's doing. But this sometime earlier we mentioned about this the group, the mob thing. That mob thing can happen at any time. In this novel, it happens twice or thrice, and it is and people don't even know that they're being a mob, exercising a mob right, mob law. The philosophy is the same, whether it is on the street or lynching a poor boy. It's the same thing. It's the same thing at work. This herd mentality, which you say, somebody says he's down, then you kick him down, to pieces. In Arjun Bedi's case, which is actually a kind of a composite character between my uncle and a very famous writer, and a writer who actually died of these accusations. And I don't want to name names here. So there, we have a certain cross-section of society exposed, and exposed very rawly. He's very tenderized in very many transactions. And what he is saying there, for example, when he says that, I'll see to it that these words which you're talking about are spoken by Dev and Dia, who are the campaign activists. They're good people. They feed dogs. They take care of things. They really are into playing the role of the watchdog in a society where the state is regressive. So they got a real challenge there. So when they say to Arjun that we will see to it that you don't publish anymore, that has actually happened to me. I remember about 2 years ago, and I was talking to this Asian friend of mine, and he was saying, CP, nobody wants to read you. So this is not, and I actually bought it. I realized that maybe he's right. Nobody wants to read me, but perhaps not for reasons of writing, perhaps for very many other reasons. But writing is about those reasons, you see. That is what it is all about. Literature is about all these things. Literature is a big set. Politics is a subset. Everything comes under that. So this is not a threat, from the right's point of view, from the campaigners' point of view. They are doing the right thing. Where the conflict comes in the right activists is actually that, in my knowledge, and I hope I am wrong, this is not a personal thing at all. In almost all these group right activists, there is a very strong streak of careerism, whether it is, increasing your fan following, writing a book, getting a fellowship. It is not wrong. It is not wrong at all. You have to survive. You got to do things with your life. You got to do all that. But this careerism is something which drives you after a point. It can take over. It can take over. So the conflict in this particular situation, when these people tell at that party where Arjun Bedi is exposed by his own cancer-stricken wife, where she throws, she can barely walk, but she throws condoms out of a drawer and says that, this is what this intellectual is. So he's really exposed there. But it is not a one-dimensional treatment. I am trying to say that you can't sit back in your chair and point your finger at someone else. That's all I'm trying to say. Because that itself has kind of disguised itself as an advanced form of evil. And, I cannot, I can't even meet eye to eye with people anymore because they're all so beautiful. They're so progressive. They're so there, And I find myself that marginal guy. So the victim here, for example, this book is dedicated to the victims or the victims. So I am with that victim, the guy who doesn't have a voice actually speaking because he's in the wrong.
Which brings me to one more passage which I must read and it's very poignant, which is from the mass destruction of one life.
The mass destruction of one life, yes. Yeah.
Mrs. Baby stood swaying in a loose, long, black, half-sleeve shirt that reached a little below her knees. Large red flowers bloomed on her skirt. Her thin, bare legs ended in a pair of black, high-heeled stilettos. She wore a brown butch wig, slightly pulled down to one side so her shaven head above her ear could be seen, a bald criticism of the celebrations around her. Her lips were scarlet. She looked like a rune lit up. Mrs. Bedi had knocked down most of the glasses in the bar. The shards seemed so much a part of the silence in the hall. There was a short plastic tube hanging loose from her nose and a blue patch on her left arm, where some sort of invasive procedure seemed to have happened recently. The guests spread out in a ring around her in caution. Stop the music, Mrs. Bedi rasped. There's no music, madam, the nurse, the one with the big nose, said. She had followed her patient in alarm. A woman is dying in this house and this man is partying, Mrs. Bedi said, shaking an angry, trembling finger at Arjun, who wore an expression of pale, perplexed concern. Mrs. Bedi, you should not exert yourself, the nurse said. They are just having a drink. Come to bed. Come on, come to bed, Mrs. Bedi. Mrs. Birdie, do this. Mrs. Birdie, don't do that. Mrs. Bedi mimicked the nurse. Why can't I have a drink? Oh no, Mrs. Bedi. No? If no one offers to pour me a drink, I can manage one on my own. Thank God I'm not a cripple yet. Though that's what everybody would like me to be. Mrs. Bedi poured herself a drink. Her hands trembled. Sorry to disappoint all of you. Still, like air, I'll rise. Arjun took a step in the direction of his wife and then stopped uncertainly, stealing a glance in the direction of Dev and Dia. Dev seemed busy on his phone. The three generals were maneuvering their way to safety towards the exit, their backs to the door. The politician stood contemplating a far, well-fed hand placed over his paunch. Silence raged like cancer. So is this the cancer, CP, which is plagued?
Yeah, it is.
Which has just plagued an individual, or is it a cancer which is societal in its influence?
Well, I think I would go, because the second option is more extreme and depressing, so I would go for that. So but this particular passage which you have read is about this Arjun Bedi's wife exposing him in a party, and finally how they come together as well. So it is all this. This is a surprising thing about writing. I had no clue how to write this novel till the last 6 months of the writing, because anyone who read it, who was kind to me, said it's okay, right? It is only the last 6 months of 7 years when I remember, actually I must tell you this, because of certain incidents. One morning I was actually in a flat apartment in Palakkad, in the northeast of Kerala, where I was working on some sort of a consultancy, and I had this flat, and I was lying in the morning. Something had happened the night before, something very traumatic, and in the morning when I woke up, I heard a dog howling. I said something in tremendous pain, and I woke up, and I realized those noises came from my throat. So when I say these things, I know that what I'm when Arjun Bedi, and then I think probably on that day is when I actually wrote this chapter. So the kind of things that can happen to you cannot happen to you until a whole configuration of things, factors kind of gel in, and then you start writing. And you don't know, because even then when you write these things, you still don't know if you are conveying anything, because Hemingway talks about this, write what you know about honestly and strongly. But it's so difficult to be honest, not because I'm writing about an experience which may or may not hurt me. That's immaterial. The honesty is in the fictive element. The honesty is when you're able to convey that experience to a third party. Then you're doing something really honestly. So I don't know if I have able to convey that, but since you seem to be reading it so well, and I can only say, not bad, not bad.
So I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions, inquisitive opinions and things on the book, which will anyway emerge, But there is this one last passage, which is the last paragraph of the book, which touched me so much, CP, that I almost teared up. I cannot not read that. Below, I heard Gloria call out to me, Bala. Her voice, kind, assured, and demanding trust, seemed to come from another world. The one I had just left with the house, the trees, and the hills in it. Maybe because I was high up in the free, limitless air before descending and moving past the lamp-lit windows to the other end, where all of it fell away from me again. When the swing stopped, I would go in and check if that gun fired through all those years at me. If it did, I would be at the sea. If I didn't, I would be a wave rising, lit in the brief sun. Either way, I would have decided the worth of my breath, answered the challenge of a word, my name.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the challenge of the names that we acquire,
Yes.
the challenge of the identities that we are,
That's right.
the challenge of the conditioning with which we are born and bred, and the challenge of the society which names us many more things than those which were given to us by our parents. I think that is what One Love and the Many Lives of OSIP is all about.
Thank you, Vani. Thank you for a brilliant, reading and questioning.
No, I still am waiting for audience questions, but before I take that, there is one question which intrigued me through and through, CP, about you.
Yeah.
And the book. Is OSIP a bit or more of CP?
Well, I think fiction is the history of the selves of the same person. It's a whole collective of selves, various selves talking to each other. I think all fiction is like that, although it's a very huge and dangerous generalization to make. It is not just OSIP which is part of me, because part of my experience have gone into that, right? Arjun is part of me, and so is actually the news baron. I have faked news. I have written the false news in newspapers. I've been there for a long time. I have built things out of nowhere.
Do you realize the ramifications of what you just said? You fake news.
Yes. Yeah. Of course I do. Yeah.
No, ramification of a statement like this.
No, I was an editor. No, Vani, I was an editor. And I'm not saying that it is a completely misguided practice, because you are protecting the lives of employees, for example, by playing up a certain kind of sensationalist headline or building a thing out of it. you're answering to the management, and they got their targets. Nothing is really simple. That's the whole point. What I'm trying to say is that the idea of falsification is not simple at all. The falsification has many layers of truths in it, which is what Stalin was saying. What do you think I'm doing? I'm doing everything for a beautiful future. Suffer now, so that your children and grandchildren are happy. So, I mean, that he killed about 23 million people, that's different. The point is that nothing is simple. So my question, my limited point is that no, we can talk about ethics, and we should talk about ethics, but we should be very, very aware of the ideas and the words we use, and that they have a real historical and value impinging on our daily lives. So when you ask me a question like whether is this a part of me, I think it is, which is the case, for example, with a lot of writers, whether it is Arthur Koestler, Hemingway, anyone, even the contemporary writers, Raymond Carver, so many writers. Carver died in the 80s, but I'm saying that these are all masters, right? See, the thing is, what are we really looking at here? We are looking at in this book, one of the things that I'm submitting is actually that the idea of experience, which is the underpinning of art, of writing, that is what is at stake in a post-liberal society. I am saying that, and these have, because you are talking about prescriptive behavior, right? Which is not bad at all, because it kind of ensures a certain kind of decorum, a certain kind of a sense of contact and everything, so that is very good. But somewhere it is going against the idea of art, and if you are actually going far enough in the left, you're going to be right. You're going to reach the right. It's like, keep going east, you reach west. Anyway, I think the questions have come.
So I have a very interesting question from Prasenjit Chaudhary. The striking thing about the novel is the relation of age to wisdom that is reversed in the novel. OSIP's writer friend Arjun said he was ancient, 70-something. OSIP was 18. Chris was 45 years older than Elizabeth. Elizabeth was older than OSIP. OSIP's grandfather is 25 years older than Chris, his brother. It was mentioned that Emmanuel Macron fell in love with his teacher when he was 15 and she was 39. Any comment? Now, this is a great chronology that he has spread out. Interesting question.
No, very, very, and it's a good question, because that is meant, there is a matrix of the age which I'm shuffling around. And I'm saying that we no longer have children. We have babies, and then we have old men. That's what we do, or old women. So, because, I know boys who watch porn at the age of 10. I myself have done it, so not a big deal. What I'm saying is that, there is a matrix which is moving. It's a very fluid matrix of chronology, of biological age. So if I want to actually talk about, OSIP as OSIP Mandelstam and OSIP Balakrishna at the same time, I have to sort of find a way of, I don't know if I've succeeded, find a way of telescoping 100 years into 2 sentences. I have to do that. So the reason why the grandfather is 93 or 94 is because he has the lived experience of having done violent things for the furtherance of an ideology, which he believes in. But then you have this boy whom he's dominating, and therefore he is sharing that world, which is exactly what we do in social media. The idea of virality is precisely that, you go with a trend, whichever is domineering, right? And so Elizabeth, Chris, Chris is the younger brother of Mr. Menon, whose adoptive grandson, the OSIP is. So we have a whole bunch of age groups here represented, and I am saying that if you have a 13-year-old boy fighting crusades, or a 15-year-old boy soldier in Sudan. You have a 14-year-old billionaire. You have, somebody writing poems and getting published by the Penguin at the age of 15. If you have all these things, why can't you have a boy who's 18-year-old who is living the 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 wisdom or the witlessness of the ages? So I take Prasenjit's question very, to my in a very good manner, and I think your point is absolutely right. There is a play of metrics of age. Yes.
There's another very interesting question from Padmaja Chalakere. I hope I got your surname right, ma'am. The articulation of the human entirety, in its good bad complexity is what your novel does so imaginatively. The group identity is a force that thrives on non-reading. Great point about careerism and the danger to individuality. Now, this is a struggle, CP, that we've seen, the individual versus the society. You just said a very problematic thing. I mean, I'm calling it problematic because there is a very big question mark on a said glamorous star couple about porn right now, and the case is making headlines. And you said there's nothing wrong in watching porn at 10. Now, there can be a lot of debate about what is wrong and what is right for children, especially of a certain age, to watch or not watch its content. I'm not being CBFC board member here. I'm just being,
just one point to interrupt you. I did not say a 10-year-old boy reading it is correct. I said it's no big deal. That's all I said. I didn't say it was correct.
So that's why I thought it's important to understand. But what Padmaja is asking is that the point of individuality and the danger to individuality and, as you said, careerism on another part, this big friction which has been there since times immemorial. I mean, how does a group identity disassociate itself from the sense of individuality, or the opposite, individual not being a part of the group and yet, thriving in his or her consciousness?
There are so many ways of arguing this out, right? See, who is the conscience keeper of a group movement? I mean, it could be a great movement. You must really understand that I'm not passing judgment. I don't want to. I'm not interested. I'm interested in understanding things. So, in a group movement, whether it's communism, it could be a right-winger or whatever, it doesn't really matter to me actually at this point. What I'm saying is that when you do that, who is the actual conscience keeper? It is always the dissenter within that group. And that dissenter would be one guy or a minority of 2 or 3 people, right? These are the people who are going to be hounded for differing with the group, which is right. The group is in the right, therefore the larger good. But what happened to these people? What happened to Nikolai Bukharin? Nikolai Bukharin, who is mentioned in this book, is he was a great intellectual, was very close to Stalin, and he was put in prison, and he was going to be shot. He was shot. The day before he was shot, because he had been so close to Stalin, he sends him a handwritten note, which asks him, "What do you gain out of killing me, Sozo?" That Sozo is how they fondly call each other. I mean, Stalin. Sozo actually means Joseph. Joseph is a Georgian variation of OSIP, actually. Anyway, now when you do that, when you have someone like Bukharin asking a question like that, and I am thinking this is happening in India all the time. Somebody is always going against the group. Now the question is that how large is your group or how small is your group, right? But the individual remains one. It's always the minority of one. He is the real victim. It is across gender. The other day somebody asked me in an interview, a very intelligent boy asked me a question in an interview saying that slapping a woman is much graver than slapping a man, given the historical repression of women and the kind of bad things or the torturous things that she has gone through. And I couldn't answer it properly, but then I thought about it, and then I realized, if you remove, if you understand the idea of slapping, physical violence is wrong, then it is across gender. You can apply it across gender. It is not man or woman or a boy or a girl. You should not slap. Simple as that. But there is where we stop, right? So what I'm trying to say is that this question that she is asking, the interiority question, and the group and the individual, I think Padmaja is actually understood what I'm trying to say. So she's endorsing my point of view, and I think I'm thankful for that.
So Arunji also has a good question, though we are going to be running out of time. But question with more fake news and news functioning, how does one go through the process of unlearning from conditioning before looking at news? I think that's a very important question because we are inundated with so much stimulus around us, CP. And the response levels that we have to stimulus is all connected to the conditioning that we've grown up with. And news is obviously a part of that conditioning. How do you disassociate the two?
I don't think information. See, we were at one point, what we were trying to do, some 10, 15 years until, I remember because I was a journalist, I've been in that field for long, I still write. When a reporter comes and says, in the meeting that, I got this great scoop or whatever story that it is, the first question the editor would ask is that, do we have a source? Do we have a good source? Is the source reliable? And he would say yes. And that's true. Maybe he's reliable. Now, what you must realize is that scoop, whether it is the greatest reporters, there's no great reporter now, sorry to say, the greatest reporters are still tools in someone else's hands. These are scoops placed for them. Somebody's talking, which is a damn good idea. It's a very good idea. But what I'm saying is that he's always working to someone's advantage. But now we have come to a point where everybody is generating news, everybody is generating opinions, and everybody has a mic, loudspeaker, so everybody's talking about it. And I think we have come to a point where we really have to say information is killing us. Because we no longer know. You see, we just have no idea how to react to anything. In Kerala just now, I must tell you this, to Arun's question as a kind of a tangential answer. In Kerala now, one of the biggest social media thing is, and I am now in Kerala, is a film actor's divorce with a great danseuse. Okay, and is amazing. And I don't normally read these things, but I went through just understand what's going on. Is amazing at the abusiveness and the kind of righteousness and the sense of as if we know everything, and finishing him off until this great lady comes on a press conference and says that this is not the reason why I'm divorcing him. Now, but look at this. How many people have you, sort of brainwashed, and how many people are contributing to that brainwash? I don't think, I have come to a point where I cut off things. I don't want to know. How many things will you know? Finally, as it says in the novel, finally, when you go to your grave, you take to your grave whatever you really want to believe in. We have a plurality of choices. What you do with it, I think, is your problem.
But C.P. Churchill very famously said it was a rumor till I called a press conference and denied it. I mean, hasn't news become so much about that, and also connects to the last question I'll be able to take today by Jaishankar Kenneth. CP, do you think Arjun is being crucified by the so-called herd mentality of social media? And I think this is a very important binary in the book, which is also a binary of our lives. 30 seconds we trash people's reputation, and in 30 seconds they become heroes of a no man's land. I mean, where are we in the middle of what is postscript and what is the truth? What is actually the truth in times like ours is a question that we will be faced with for a long time, isn't it?
That's true. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. But to go back to Jaishankar's question, No, it is not a crucifixion at all. I think he deserves it. He deserves it because the way he looks at things, and the way his individualism perhaps has to be reined in, to some extent. But does it kind of actually justify cancellation and a kind of a figurative castration? I definitely think not, because if you think you're going to encourage, or you're going to be a platform only for good people, then you will not know what evil is. You will not know what the other side is at all, and you cannot really write with an idea that I was talking to someone else about a few months ago for an anthology of poetry, and we had this discussion, and I said, I am not going to give you, or anyone else is going to give you. No, you can't really ask me or expect me to give you a police contact certificate before I write a poem. I can't do that, And therefore, your question, I take it in good spirit, but I also believe that to some extent that is, that thing has to be out there. It has to be discussed, But I would not really recommend that, somebody is cancelled on the basis of an allegation, because you are sort of controverting the entire idea of the English common law.
So I think we could go on and on for many more hours and many more days, because the book lends itself to so many more conversations. And as I say, conversations never end, nor do the chain of thoughts, which are connected to books like these. But before I close up today, I will read this beautiful line, which is the opening page of the book of OSIP Mandelstam. In essence, my father transferred me to a totally alien country. In essence, my father transferred me to a totally alien country and distant, although completely un-Jewish atmosphere.
That is the first opening lines, of his book.
So,
thank you.
More power to you, CP Surendran, for this completely courageous, delicious, complicated, very, very real, and very cinematic book that you've written. I'm going to be one more time bringing the book up and saying this is totally worth a read, friends. And also for the fact that the binaries of our lives, the societal influences, our conditioning, and the names we are given at our birth, and the delusions we live with, all of that comes together in this book. CP, final words to you before we close up for the night.
Yeah, all I can say is thank you for the questions. Thank you for Vani. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you, Ashutosh, for the Kalinga Lit Fest platform. And I only wish that, I'm not saying that you buy the book, but you should read it whichever way you can, and discuss these issues, not in terms of a great historical treatise, but actually in terms of intersubjective experiences. And at the end of all this, I want to say to Vani, please keep promoting me.
I will, as long as you keep writing. And maybe we see you on the cinematic space soon.
Thank you. Yeah.
Maybe that's also the new normal. Thank you, Kalinga Festival. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you, Niyogi Books. And Bhav Samvad is a very beautiful and a very interesting platform. We were just talking to each other. That's what we did. And may conversations keep happening. That's the only way society grows further.
That's right.
Thank you so much, CP. Thank you so much, CP. And thank you, all of you all. Have a good night. And dream on.
Bye, Vani. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.